Hello and welcome to another episode of the F1 Hour with my friend and yours, the goatiest of all F1 minds that have ever go to the one that they call Mr. Peter D. Windsor. How are you doing? Good
I'm well,
sir.
Cam. Thank you very much. No more of those introductions now. Come on, just
I,
let's just get straight into it.
I try not to, Peter, but they will
Mm.
come for me if I do not put some respect on your name. So let me talk to you about some. How are you keeping in the first instance, Peter?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Yeah, I've had some. It's still windy today. Some pretty windy days, almost weeks here in Spain. Lovely weather otherwise, but just windy and for golf and various other things, a bit of a pain. But no, we're getting there. Yeah, lovely otherwise. Really good. Thank
Good,
you.
good man. There's a couple F1 centric threads at which we need to pull, as is customary, Peter, on the
Mm.
back of the first proper test this year. What do you think was the biggest story?
Well, I suppose it's, many drivers have said this, Lewis and Max in particular, how it's even more complicated than I think any of us feared. It's really complicated. And who am I to tell a large media company what the fans want and what they're going to enjoy? But my opinion is that they don't want it to be too complicated, and they just want the racing to be great and the spectacle to be immense, and they don't want lots of nitty gritty complication of the type that we're having. I mean, I don't know if anybody here has seen the chat I did with Mark Slade last week, but a couple of chats, and Mark's as lucid and as eloquent as anyone you'll find really in the Formula One pit lane, to be honest. And I'm struggling to keep up with him, and I think he's struggling to keep up with what's going on anyway. I mean, it is so absurdly complicated that maybe Max is right. We might as well just race Formula E instead. It's just crazy. And on top of that, I know that I know that Formula One, the teams, Liberty, the FIA are all paranoid about top speeds and how Formula One can't look to be going slower, and we have to have better top speeds. And that's one of the reasons we've got active aero. Another reason is so that we can actually get the things to have enough power to finish the lap. But I'm astonished. I think this is probably my personal takeaway from the first Bahrain test is how slow the cars are, and by which I mean around corners. Because I'm not interested in top speeds. I never have been. That's why I like Lotus Elands, because they're super quick around corners. For me, corners are what it's all about. And when I see cars braking now into turn 9, it breaks my heart. And two different brakes there, obviously. And I think that's very sad, because racing cars were unbelievably impressive through that left-hander, that quick left-hander. And now they're braking for it. And maybe it'll get better. Maybe by the time we get to the Bahrain Grand Prix, it will be better. Let's hope so. But at the moment, as a takeaway, that was my biggest takeaway. As a result of which, they're going much slower into 10, and it's down to first gear. It's not difficult to keep the car in a straight line and all the rest of it, which it's made it quite a boring, fairly ordinary section of road. Um, and then the lap times as well. You're talking 33s on the third day when they're out there on soft tires, and Kimi's quickest or whatever. 29s they were doing in
Hmm.
2025. And that's a bit of a shock as well. I never imagined they'd be that slow. Again, let's wait and see what happens at the Grand Prix, but that's the takeaway from the test. And the complication, going back to it, is everywhere. Whether it's how to manage the power around the lap, whether it's what to do with the overtake situation they've got, whether it's the start procedure, everything is so complicated. And I would imagine right now the powers that be, whoever they are in inverted commas, are saying, well, on the one hand, they're saying, well, it'll all sort itself out. The teams will get eventually sorted out and we'll have motor racing and everything will be fine. On the other hand, they're thinking, what have we done? What have we done? And of course, if you really, I'm going to go into a little bit of a rant here, but everybody who watches the channel, my channel, regularly will know probably what I'm going to say next. But if you really want to know why we're in this mess, it's because in 2014, Formula One decided to go to hybrid engines, as distinct from adopting Formula E as its keynote support race series, which it should have owned from day one. The Formula One team should have put all their future energy in terms of saving the planet into Formula E cars coming from all the different Formula One teams. And that should have been part of the race card at every Grand Prix. And Formula One should have been doing Formula E from day one, allowing Formula One on its own just to remain a spectacular show that we could hone and improve around Drive to Survive and everything else that's been happening since Liberty came on board. And that never happened because of the big fight between Bernie and John Todd. Bernie and Max just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Off the tongue. Bernie and John Todd. Jean Todt set up Formula E on his own, basically to put Formula One in a difficult position. And he succeeded because Formula One then had no option but to go into this sort of compromise hybrid world, much more expensive, much more complicated. And now we've been putting band-aids on it ever since because it's been more difficult to overtake. The cars have become too big, too heavy, too this, too that. And now we are in 2026 with a sort of refined version of all that. We've tried this, we've tried that, and we'll just do this now. And we've gone to even more electrification, but not full electrification, or indeed getting rid of the ICE altogether, the internal combustion engine. And we got this compromise, and compromises are never good. And that's why, it kind of pains me to say it, but that's why Formula One grew so quickly under the leadership of Bernie Ecclestone, because he was an autocrat. There was nothing compromised about Formula One in the entire era of Bernie. Everything was, well, until we got to the Jean Todt thing, but until that point, everything was, this is what makes sense, let's do it, let's go motor racing. And now we have this compromise. And I actually feel very sorry for some of the very good people working at the FIA and working at Liberty who have to work within these restrictions of this absurd compromise all the time and this complication. And it's going to get worse, not better, I think. And, we haven't even begun to talk about the potential for the drama around compression ratios.
Yeah, we'll get to it, Peter.
Yeah, but it gets worse and worse.
Just to double click on the rules and regs and the hybridization. Does not F1 have a duty of care? They always see themselves as the bastion of automotive innovation, and it feels like we're going, for now, at least in the direction of hybridization, that it needs to be efficiency, that there's sustainability in there. Is this not... I mean, though we don't like it, Peter, is this not an inevitability as far as the direction of Formula One?
Well, I think if you had 200,000 Formula One fans in an arena, and you said, put your hand up if you want Formula One to be all about noise, power, burning rubber, burning fuel, close racing, not that expensive, all the cars pretty closely matched, put your hand up. I suspect 50%, maybe more, would put their hands up. And if you said the opposite, if you said, bear in mind how expensive Formula One is, how much it's dependent on Wall Street and investment banks and everything else, and bear in mind that the motor industry is going in this direction, how important it is to have manufacturers involved in the sport and to embrace the new technology. Would you like to see Formula One going in that direction? Probably a lot of people put their hands up. What I'm saying is there's no straight answer to that, other than to do what I suggested in the first place, which is for Formula One to have on its race card, like Formula Academy, to have had its own Formula E series. And then nobody could have criticized Formula One for not paying attention to the changing world and to saving the planet, because it's doing it. It would have had an electric car series of its own, and Formula One drivers would have partaken in that series, and the teams would have lent their technology to the teams, to the Formula E teams. But because Formula One did not do that, we're in this mess. So you're absolutely correct. But the solution is not to say, oh, well, let's just carry on as we are. The solution is to look back and see who caused the problem and to try to get it right now. Why doesn't Formula One buy Formula E? And then just go back to normal racing. Has anybody suggested that? With all the money that's being spent, I wouldn't have thought Formula E is that expensive to buy, actually, is it?
No, well, I think it would be cheap, but they've got their eyes on MotoGP for now, haven't they? And
well, maybe they have, but that's maybe because Formula One have never put an offer in.
Does it serve their purpose, though?
Sorry, just to add a qualifier to that. Of course, you would say, well, Formula E is structured around completely different circuits. The cars are built for those circuits. Okay, you take a 2-year hiatus with it and you repurpose it onto the Formula One tracks in which we're racing. Or maybe you have a different format for the race over the weekend. Whatever it is, Formula E would have solved the problem that we now face, because we're now in a terrible compromise, and that is the problem we have. And just one other final point. I think I read the other day that Porsche are spending a fortune now not doing an electric 911. Is that not the case? Because of this was such an outcry when they said they were going to do an electric 911. I may be wrong here, excuse me if I am, They went down and spent a lot of tooling expenditure and a lot of planning, and now they've decided, nah, we're not going to do it. So all this stuff about, where we're going. Look at the ultimate high performance car company in the world, you'd have to say, is Porsche, and they've decided to stop an electric 911.
I think we're not ready yet, are we, Peter?
Exactly. And is Formula One ready to be doing all these things and reshaping itself around every little thing that happens in the world of motoring? Just be a sport in your own right, in the same way that ice hockey is, that downhill skiing is, talking about the Olympics at the moment, that that baseball, football is. Just continue to be the sport that you are, when we know and love.
But to that point, Peter, Liam Parker, Chief Communications Officer, has already told us verbatim that F1 is not a sport, it is content.
Well, I mean, yeah, but that's not saying anything, is it? I mean, Bernie used to say that as well, and everybody's been saying that for a long time. Is it a sport? Is it a business? Is it this? Is it that? I don't think that's relevant, is it? I think the real point is Formula One is big enough to have embraced the electric car future in a way that did not in any way compromise its own technology. And it's homebrewed and it's organically grown technology. And I think one of the problems, and we've always said, one of the problems is that Formula One loves to say it is the pinnacle of technical engineering automotively in the world. But it does very, very little to help the fans actually understand that technology. And that was before we went to the 2026 regulations. And before the 26 regulations, it was very difficult actually to see what a Formula One engine actually looked like, what the spark plugs were like, what the pistons, what everything else was like. Nobody really has a clue what the batteries were like, because it's secrecy. And now in 2026, it's 10 times worse.
Yeah.
In terms of explaining it to the public and showing it to the public. So this great thing, this great calling card that Formula One has, the pinnacle of automotive technology, nobody understands it. That can't be good. And what's all this business of, bringing MGUH to the public's attention in Formula One and then just discarding it like that?
Yeah.
With no explanation at all.
It feels a little
What's that all about? Where's the logic in that?
It feels...
There isn't any, is there? It's just that Audi didn't want it. That was it.
So go on then, Peter. Is the multitudinous manufacturer juice worth the squeeze? Is having Audi and Cadillac F1 soon, and so too Scuderia Ferrari, and all these different Pitt and Red Bull Ford now, is that United Colours of Benetton PU landscape worth the squeeze as far as the rules and regs?
No, it's not. I mean, Formula One fans, again, if you had this huge auditorium with the 200,000 people, would you rather see a Ford Formula One team win a Grand Prix or a Cadillac Grand Prix win, or would you like to see a Ferrari or McLaren or Red Bull win, proper race teams? What are people going to say? Where are the fans with that? I don't think we need to even anticipate, even imagine what the answer would be there. What's wrong with the great race teams, with the McLarens, with the Red Bulls? And I include Ferrari in that because they're just a great race team. That's all they are. And so it goes on. Haas is a race team. Yeah, there's a bit of Toyota there. Red Bull is a race team. Yeah, there's a bit of Ford there, but so what? Now, if you're trying to sell Formula One on Wall Street to ignorant American bankers who have no idea about anything, I suppose it's easier to sell them the Ford name or the Cadillac name than it is to sell the Red Bull or the McLaren name. And is money the only thing that matters in this world? Again, you probably know my views. I think not. And I think money in many ways leads us down the wrong paths in so many directions. And I yearn for the days when there was less money in the sport and it was less global, if that's the right word. It was smaller. Because I think, it's just like restaurants. As I've said before, would you rather eat in a restaurant that's got 13 tables serving unbelievably good food, or would you rather serve in the Generation 4 version of that restaurant 5 years down the road, which has got 200 tables and is owned by a merchant bank and serving pretty average food?
Fair. Good shout, Peter. I have this sort of paranoia. What I desperately don't want, for selfish reasons, I enjoy talking to people about Formula One. I enjoy when I get a text from a long lost friend saying, "Oh, this Max Verstappen fella." So I don't want to go back to the days when, back when I was at grammar school, there was only one other kid with whom I could speak the language of F1. So can't we agree, Peter, that the more the merrier? That there is some value in growing in Cadillac F1 putting on a commercial during the Super Bowl and broadening therefore the attention dollars that come on the sport.
Uh, you're asking completely the wrong guy, Cameron, because when I was at school, I had the same issue. Everybody loved football, everybody loved cricket, everybody loved surfing, and I was the only guy that was remotely interested in motor racing. And I was bullied a lot actually by at school because I was a minority of one. I wanted to go to Warwick Farm to watch the motor racing, and it was pretty painful. But actually, I grew because of that, and I've actually appreciated that that was a very good thing because it allowed me to focus a lot more on my sport and my chosen sport, made me more resilient. So I'm the wrong guy to answer that question. As I've said before, some of my great memories are of races where the winner has been almost lapping the field and the grandstands have been half empty. It doesn't worry me that the grandstands aren't full. It doesn't add to it at all for me. The only thing I'm interested in are the drivers and the cars and the event. And that's it. Whether it's 100,000 people there or 10,000 people is irrelevant. There'll always be motor racing, and some of the best races you see at club events even today, with nobody in the grandstands at all. So I don't believe big is better. That's, I've said that a million times before, and I'm going to continue to say it. I don't think big is better. Bigger is better.
Not necessarily. I agree with you, Peter. Not necessarily. Let me talk to you about Max Verstappen because a lot's been made about his comments about the rules and regs, saying that they're too artificial, and like you mentioned earlier, that we may as well all go and race Formula E. Do you think there's a real possibility that Max Verstappen calls it quits, isn't enjoying his racing in 2026 and just says, right, no mass, that's the end. At the end of this season, I'm going to go and enjoy myself racing GT3 cars in the 24 hours of Nürburgring?
Well, I think if the Red Bull is really uncompetitive this year and he's really struggling to qualify, get into Q3 and get a result. Yeah, I think that is possible because why would he want to waste the best years of his career doing that? He'll, I don't think he'll retire. I think he'll just he'll go and drive for Mercedes or Ferrari, whoever's got the quick car, won't he? But he's definitely disappointed because it's too complicated. I think we need to see Max's comments in the correct context. And he was very careful to couch them in terms of, I like the car, it's smaller, I like the look of it, the feel's not bad, but racing is too complicated. That's all he was saying. The management of the engine is too complicated. And I don't think any driver would disagree with that. And probably most of them, if asked, would say it publicly. And so I don't think he said anything that's particularly outlandish. But what I do think is that we haven't yet seen the full picture of these cars. And as we've got a video out at the moment, I did one with Mark Slade, about how there's a specific area of the power regeneration involving the rear axle, which will reward drivers who can be off the brakes as long as possible, but that'll mean having a very, very light, tetchy rear end of the car. And Max may find, without really realizing what's going on around him, just driving the car the way the engineers do. So, look, Max, we want to make the rear axle as light as possible. Can you live with it? And Max will say, oh, yeah, I'll give it a go. And he's probably going to be living with a rear axle that's 5% lighter than anybody else's, bar Charles, probably, in terms of if you could do some sort of comparison into medium speed corners or even change a direction. And then you'll suddenly find, wow, I'm doing the lap time actually, and haven't got that much power, not much going on. Wonder what's happening here. I think some things like that will happen. And I think credit to Mark Slade that he's appreciated that point. It may well be something that Max hasn't appreciated yet, and because it's not a great thing for the drivers to have to accept, is it? That in order to be quick, you've got to have a really unstable rear. But that's basically at the moment that's how it looks. Yeah. You're going to get more, apart from what Max normally does with the rear, which gives him a reward in terms of getting into the corner earlier, and he's got beautiful ability to massage the car. Now there's a double whammy reward because that will also give him more power.
Yeah.
That's so that in a sense, that's quite an interesting thing, isn't it? The new regulations are giving us. You live with an unstable rear and you actually get more engine power as your reward. It's a bizarre thing, but it seems to be the case.
It's
so, and if that is the case, as I say, Charles and Max will be the two guys that would benefit most from that. Anybody who tends to brake in a straight line as late as possible in a conventional racing car will not be in great shape on that specific point, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a good shout, and to that point, it seems like Max was doing some very unconventional things also, as far as the downshift and taking turn 10 in first more than the rest, apart from Bortoleto and Hulkenberg, it seems, on the second day. It's quirky, Peter, but to that point, though.
Well, yeah, but yeah, just stop. Again, as Mark has pointed out, that kind of depends on the mapping of the engine now, which is much more related to the ratios than it ever has been. And again, don't underestimate how slowly the cars are going now. And that's one of the reasons they're taking that corner, are able to take that corner in first. It's even an option. So it's more to do with how slow they are through turn 9 than it is, oh, wow, Max is doing something really cool through turn 10. It's not that. It's that they're going slow enough now to be able to take first, which is very sad in my opinion.
Yeah. And to that point, Peter, a lot's been written about the broadcaster's ability to translate the 2026 rules by dint of the graphics that they have when we're watching it. That thus far there's not been a lot done as far as us being able to see what the state of charge is on the battery or the active aero. Is it in boost? Are they in overtake? Is it partial because it's rain? Is it too late for the broadcaster to do something, to do what they need to do to try and translate these 2026 rules so that we know what's going on in real time? Or do you think they're going to turn it around? Because I don't think they've done anything just yet, Peter.
Well, I think one of the problems will be deciding what to put on screen, because there are so many aspects. I mean, one thing you didn't mention there, and there are many others, but one is that the fuel metering rate is now energy driven and not volumetrically driven. Is that, I mean, in reality, that should be on the screen as well. What fuel rate have they got? How they harvest the power if they're within 1 second of the car in front, how they harvest that on the next lap. Is that going to be done in a very, very clear way of how he's doing it relative to his previous laps when he wasn't trying to harvest the power with that advantage? Things like that. So there's so many nuances that it's kind of like they should just have AI commentary, I think, and that'll be a joke, won't it? But I don't see any solution because there's so much stuff out there, and it's bad enough when you've got 2 onboard cameras on the screen and you don't know which one to watch and you miss something because you're watching the other one and things like that. Imagine what it's going to be like now when you've got, like, you could have potentially at least 6 critical parameters graphics of on screen, plus the car you're watching, plus another onboard. The last thing you need is anybody talking because that'll distract you even more. It's I don't know. Did they think this through? That's a rhetorical question for you.
Do they ever think anything through, Peter?
Well, you can't blame the technical engineers who've written these rules within F1 and the FIA because they've just got this mandate to do it. So, and they're not that concerned about how the public swallow it all and digest it. Equally, the TV companies probably had very little input on how the regulations should go. I mean, just thinking as I speak, I mean, in reality, the producers of all the rights holders for Formula One around the world probably should have been involved in all the technical discussions, because they should have been saying, yeah, well, how are you going to put that on screen at any given moment? They could have put up this barrier or this, put a caution, said, well, that's going to be very difficult to tell the public. And that point that they could have made had they been invited is just as important as, well, do we really want Ford or Audi or all these big manufacturers in Formula One? I mean, it's a huge point, isn't it? How are
100%.
you going to tell the public about this?
Yeah,
Oh, well, that's their job, somebody else's job. And that's the problem, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Formula One, I mean, don't underestimate F1's ability to do a great job with graphics and to get information out there. The problem is how to prioritize that and to make sure that the graphic that you're looking at is a graphic that's actually related to what is about to happen next. And that's a very, very difficult thing to do. I mean, I can't imagine even race engineers at the moment would be able to do that, really.
which is a massive problem, Peter. If something's
Well, it
going on
is.
track, I need to understand why it's happened, right? And more to the point, casuals who are brand new in the sport be looking at all these numbers on the screen and be like, so why did Max overtake Lewis into? They just won't even. There'll be no
Well, and
explain.
here's an idea off the bat based on what we're talking about, Cameron, and that is that we have this format now, and Formula One's very bad at changing its ways. Once it's got a format that kind of works, they just stick with it for 10, 20, 30 years. We've got a format now of interviewing the first three within about 5 minutes of the race being over, which is a big improvement from what it used to be. To go up to the unilateral thing, and it was only after the podium and all that stuff. It's much better now. There's no doubt about that. But in my opinion, now they need to interview at least the top six, if not the top 10, very quickly. Because imagine if at the Australian Grand Prix, Max Verstappen is leading going into the last lap with Oscar Piastri behind him and Charles Leclerc behind Oscar. And for some reason that only the engineers know and no graphic is on screen, suddenly Max loses all power, but it's something to do with the way the cars run or whatever it is, and he finishes fourth. Are we not going to want to talk to Max Verstappen immediately after the race and see what he says and thinks? Is that not at least make the best of these regulations by doing that and getting the guy as he steps out of the car rather than in a scrum 10 minutes later? And in my opinion, they need to be doing that right now. They need to be making sure that they interview at least the top six drivers, because there are bound to be changes right at the end of the race, in my opinion. Guys could just completely run out of energy, fuel, or whatever. Only 70 litres on there. Okay, fuel's supposedly not a big issue. But as Mark Slade again made the point, it's an interesting point, isn't it? And I'm going to talk to him again about this, that in order to have more electrical power now, you've actually got to spend more fuel. So that's, for all the people wanting to, look in the direction of how electrified Formula One is going, we're actually using more fuel now to make it more electrified. Is that good? Is that
No,
good for the old image?
no.
Anyway, just to reiterate my point, more drivers to be interviewed immediately after the race, not just the top three.
Yeah. But I mean, if they can't even get their compression ratio regs written correctly, Peter, good luck with that. To that point,
Well,
Peter.
they can. I mean, in all fairness to them,
Can
they haven't
they?
changed anything apart from the ratio. It was always measured at ambient. It's just that it was 16:1 and now it was 18:1, now it's 16:1. And if you change something, it's immediately a red flag to an engineer with creativity, because he'll think, oh, they've changed that. I wonder how we can unchange that and get back to where we were. So they never thought about it before. I presume they could have done it before, couldn't they not? They could have run it 20-1.
I think they just made it again, like you said, Peter, it's the big red flag. We are only going to test this at ambient conditions in the pits. So, I mean, if
But again,
18 to
that
1
was
up,
always the case. The point is that they just changed the ratio. It was always measured at ambient. It's the change that was the red flag. If you don't want anybody to do anything, don't change anything.
it's true.
It's like active differentials. We still have active diffs, unbelievably complicated. We've had them since whatever it is, 1994.
Yeah.
Because when Bernie wanted to ban them, he didn't know they existed. So because he didn't ban them at the Hockenheim Agreement in 93, they're still on the cars now. Nobody questions that at all. As I say, Formula One just carries on.
Peter, to the compression ratio thing, do you think that Mercedes do have themselves anywhere between 20 to 25 brake horsepower advantage because of their ability to run 18 to 1 when out on track? Were they sandbagging at the test and hiding their advantage light under a bushel?
I suspect there's a bit of that. Yeah, I think they'll probably go pretty quickly. Back end of this week's test. I mean, what did Kimi do? 33.9, 33.6.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you can't read anything into those lap times, can
No.
you? Because Max did 34.8 on day one, and they're still doing 34s in day three. I don't know. I mean, obviously, there's a school of thought out there that Mercedes are sandbagging like crazy because they know they have this huge advantage. They don't want to alert too many people to it. And come the Australian Grand Prix, a bit like Brawn in '09, they'll just disappear into the distance. But then you'd say, well, that's a silly thing to do because they'll still change the regs after the Australian Grand Prix. So at what point do you stop sandbagging if you have got that huge advantage? And also, it's kind of a difficult thing because you've got to assume it would be the same for all the Mercedes teams. And it's kind of a difficult thing to ask all the teams to do, is it not? Look, get them all to get, listen, boys, what we're going to do is we're going to sandbag. I want all the teams now. This is Toto talking, all you teams, all to sandbag like crazy throughout both tests. Yeah, but hang on, Toto. We've only just switched to Mercedes. This is Alpine talking now. Well, we can't just sandbag the whole time. We've got to see roughly where we're at. Well, you either want the engine or you don't. And then, but you get the Australian Grand Prix, you can do whatever you like. I mean, it's kind of difficult to see that all happening, isn't it? If it was just one team, maybe one other customer, a bit like, Red Bull with the Red Bull powertrain, there's two teams. You could kind of imagine it, but it's difficult when you've got so many customer teams now to pull that off. I don't know. What do I know? I mean, I don't think anybody knows, do they? I mean,
not for sure. One
no,
can't know,
no,
but it does
no.
look and feel like. I mean, everybody. If there's one common denominator on the grid after day three, it was that everybody, Charles Leclerc included, Lando said that, and Max said that 2 to 3 brake horsepower. You want to put a zero after that. Max said. Charles Leclerc said we think that the Mercedes have a lot of tricks up their sleeves, and they're not showing us.
And they can, can obviously see how quick they are out of corners, and they can, they can look at that data. But as I say, how Mercedes manage that, because one thing's for sure, whatever they've got, McLaren are going to want to have it, and so are Williams, and so are Alpine, and who else is on Merc? Somebody else.
Williams.
Yeah, Williams. They're going to want it too. So it's a difficult thing to manage.
Are they not all incentive to do as Mercedes have been doing and turn down their engine to 6, only turn it up to 12 when we get to Australia, because we don't want it feels like it's an inevitability that they change the rules. It's just a matter of when they change them right? Yeah. Is it 27 or 26? They can't change it for 26, surely, Peter. Too much.
No, I don't think they will, because there are so many cars with Mercedes power units. There's no reason to do it. I mean, if this season is a washout because of that for Red Bull, Ferrari, and anybody else with those engines, or who doesn't have a Mercedes, let's put it that way, it'll still be a pretty good year, won't it? Because you've still got McLaren versus Mercedes, which is a world championship, So they're not going to change anything, I don't think. They'll just say, well, tough.
Yeah.
Wow. I guess. I would assume. But again, it's such a ridiculously messy, complicated thing that we shouldn't even be talking about it. We should be talking about who's done the best job with the car, which driver's looking good. But here we are talking about all this nonsense all the time.
Some say, though, Peter, that it's quite a deliberate, very crafty ploy from F1 by dint of the compression ratios to keep F1, the F1 rumour mill, on the front pages. Is that are they that clever, Peter, to have changed? No.
As I say, I think they would have changed. They would have. Well, I don't think it was a big deal for them to go from 18.1 to 16.1, bearing in mind what they're doing with the fuel and the engine and everything else. And that's all there was to it. There was no other thought put to it. Okay, we'll reduce compression ratios as part of this whole new PU package. So there's no indication there that it was done specifically to keep everybody talking and having a laugh.
Fair. What do you make, Peter, of Freddie Vasseur? I mean, it's a bit of it gets very political with a super majority, and it feels like 4 of the 5 teams needed to sign up and protest it in order to effect for a rule change. It was said that three of the four PU manufacturers who aren't Mercedes, being Ferrari, Audi, and I forget the other one. Look at that, Red Bull Ford. But Red Bull Ford have changed tact, haven't they? They were all going to vote against it. Red Bull Ford changed tact because it was said that they had this compression ratio trick, but then it turns out that they couldn't run it reliably. And now the only team, apparently, that aren't going to vote for the rule and reg change is Scuderia Ferrari. Why, Peter? Why would Frederick Vasseur not vote to change the rules?
Because Ferrari may well have got something else that's quite good and don't want to rock the boat, because if you do this, you'll get paid back that way. Ferrari don't look too bad, do they? They look reasonably good. They finished the third day. I mean, Lewis did a reason. What was he? Third quickest, I think, something like that.
I think on his quickest on the race, on the simulation.
Yeah. I would think it's only that, really. I mean, you've said before, Toto and Freddie seem to be quite good mates as well, don't they?
Yeah, they are good mates.
So maybe Toto said, "We'll give you the technology. You can, for 27, you can have it exclusively of all the other manufacturers or something like that." I don't know.
Wow.
Probably illegal. But I don't know. I keep saying I don't know because I don't. And am I frustrated by that? Not really, no, because I'm not that interested in all this technical, eco-political rubbish, to be honest. It's just nonsense, isn't it? Again, I'm only interested really in motor racing, not all this stuff. Yeah. And what else can I say about it? Not much, really. I think, we haven't seen any of the proper times yet, I guess, lap times. We'll see what happens. Red Bull, I mean, do we think that's why they weren't quick? I think they had a hydraulic issue, not related to the power unit. Maybe they're completely, not telling us the truth. Unlikely on something like that. What other issues did they have? I don't think they were unreliable, apart from that morning the Hadjar lost, were they, on the second day?
Yeah, Isaac had a bit of... I
think they had a reasonable run after that, and Max ran like a train on the first day.
Super
and
impressive.
Was quite quick too, wasn't he?
Yeah, super
in the heat of the day.
Yeah.
So maybe they're sandbagging as well.
It could be.
But in fairness, that was the other supplier, engine builder, that we think does have that compression ratio thing, don't we?
Yeah.
But you think it was unreliable?
Yeah, they couldn't run it reliably, and that's why.
But how do you know that? How do we know that?
I don't know anything, Peter. This is all
speculation. They haven't admitted to it, let alone talked about it being run reliably. And the hydraulics, as we say, they say were not related to the power unit. Right. So we just don't know.
We don't know anything, Peter.
No, we don't actually. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that tell us that what they know, they think they know, and a lot of people believe that. If we're very honest, I don't think the teams know. I still don't think they know anything, really.
It's too early.
They know a little bit about their cars now, but they don't really know what the opposition are doing, and they don't really know how it's going to go.
It is too early. It's to that point, Peter. I want to ask you about the starts, because Andrea Stella came out and spoke very disparagingly about the starts and the potential risk. You, for one, Peter, have always said that the most dangerous instances in F1 are when you have on the straight a driver in front being descended upon at a serious closing speeds by the driver behind, a la Gilles Villeneuve, a la 1982 Canadian Grand Prix, Riccardo Paletti. Do you think this is a serious thing?
A la Jacques Villeneuve.
Also.
Melbourne.
Yeah, very good shout.
Yeah. Or Max and Romain Grosjean, Monaco.
Also, and Carter Kayen, Mark Webber, Australia.
Good one. Yeah.
Do you think this is something, the starts in particular, that the FIA need to get their arms around it before Australia and do something to avert potential risk?
Well, I totally respect Andrea Stella's opinion on that. Again, I've talked to Mark Slade about it, and he's made the point that the cars are much lighter now on the line. They're about 60 kilos lighter, I think, thanks to the absence of the MGUH, the less fuel on board, the lighter wheels and tires, etc. So the cars are pretty light. It's about 500 horsepower of ice going through the rear wheels until they get to, 50 kilometers an hour?
Yeah.
At which point they can start to let the electric side of the power unit come into play. And I'm guessing that what Stella's showing the world is that, yes, we're only using ice off the line, but in reality, we're having to balance that against electric power, which is going to come in, and we want that to be full maximum power at 50 kilometers an hour. And that is a very, very difficult, dangerous balance, balls in the air, if you like, for the drivers to have to maintain. And I totally get that. Maybe it would have been better to have said the first 3 laps of the race should only be driven on the ice, something like that, or the second, do the full lap on ice or something, because what the last thing you need is speed differential, as you correctly say, on the line. And we've all got terrible memories, or I have anyway, of that sort of accident on a starting grid. And it was bad enough anyway with the old start procedures of getting everything right. It was still a big deal to get everything right. And now we're complicating it by a factor of, I don't know what, probably about 6 or more, maybe 10. And the drivers, there's a lot for them to be doing. And some teams are going to do a better job with their drivers than others. Some drivers are going to have a clearer head. Some teams are going to keep things more simple than others. It's going to be, it's a terrible thing. And yeah, but there's nothing about the start that needs to be complicated. It should always be very straightforward. It's to do with reaction time. It's to do with acceleration off the line. It's to do with positioning your car well, with your brain in a nice zone where you're not anticipating anything. You're just reacting to what everybody's doing around you. It's one of the great moments of the Grand Prix. The last thing Formula One needs are cars slow away from the line, speed differential, or worse, some sort of accident at the start.
Agreed. It feels like it feels almost very simple to correct for, but I don't think they'll do it, Peter. Genuinely, I think we'll go into the Australian Grand Prix, and I think the starts will be more complicated yet and still than necessary.
I think they've got so many things on which to focus now that possibly that start issue is somewhere near the bottom of the list. Because I mean, another potential is how many cars are going to finish the race. That's another thing. And how many cars are going to finish the race with cars that are raceable and quick around the lap? How many cars are going to be droning around at 3 miles an hour at the end of the race? All that stuff. It's bad for television. I mean, another thing you could do on the start line, I suppose, is increase the gap between the cars, but it's pretty big now. What is it, 8 meters or something like that? To do that even more it changes the element of the sport then, because it enhances the advantage you have if you've out-qualified somebody else. And I don't think fans would want to see those huge gaps. And some circuits, you wouldn't be able to do that anyway. No. Monaco, I mean, if you start increasing the gap between the cars, the back of the grid would be around Rascasse, exit of Rascasse, wouldn't they?
No easy solve.
Nurg's corner, I think. Philip Nurg's, is that right? Nurg's corner, yeah. So, it's all difficult. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's a great motor racing truism, a great Formula One truism that nobody ever seems to have remembered. And for me, the thin end of the wedge was the beginning of fan surveys. Everyone will knock me down now, I know, but the minute they started doing these huge fan surveys in which they asked ridiculously simple questions like, would you like to see more overtaking? Everybody ticks yes. And all of a sudden, Formula One, we got to have cars that make it much easier to overtake. And should we have this? And then you at the same side, you got the PU drama coming in with the hybrids and all these different things happening. And that's why we end up in the mess we're in. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And we had a brilliant Formula One in 2013. V8s, V10s, cheap, reliable, incredibly impressive to watch, listen to, great cars, bit big, but okay, and now look.
Bring back V10s, Peter. Now.
Well, it's kind of a sad state of affairs, isn't it? When in order to save weight on the cars, the only thing they can do is make the tires and wheels a bit smaller. That's one thing. And secondly, the active aero, all this stuff we've been given all these years about DRS and how it's so important for the fans and the racing. And now DRS has gone complete. All they've done now effectively said is, right, everyone's going to sit in a DRS train at every Grand Prix. That's basically what's happening.
That's insane.
Because everybody does exactly the same thing with their wings, exactly the same place every lap. Insanity. In a straight line. Absolutely. There's no advantage for any driver skill there at all.
Insane, Peter.
Yeah.
Insane. As we round through.
I mean, and that's an important point to remember, because there was a time when they were talking about these 26 rigs when they were saying that active aero would be applied on the entry or exit of some corners, and it wouldn't always just be in a straight line. And that's why we had a lot of chats about that, how some teams and drivers were going to do a much better job with that. Now, all lowest common denominator stuff now, everything's in a straight line.
They're geniuses, Peter. They're absolute genius. I feel like
that's probably one of the reasons Max is really annoyed. I would think that one particularly. I would imagine.
I mean, look how positive we are about the 2026 rules and regs, Peter. I feel like I'm being a massive Debbie Downer.
As I said in the live stream, it's not acceptable, to be honest, for drivers now to be saying, well, yeah, I'm just a driver and I've got to express myself, and I think it's ridiculously complicated and we shouldn't be driving these engine management machines. We should be driving racing cars. Well, it's too late to be saying that. They're Formula One drivers, for Pete's sake. They should have been hammering on the doors of F1 and the FIA over the last 18 months saying, we want to be sitting in on this meeting, please. I'm a world champion. I want to be in this meeting. I want to know what you guys are talking about with these cars that I'm going to be driving. But they don't. They all do their own thing, and then the regulations come out, and then they all moan. In that sense, I don't have much sympathy for them, because it's much easier if you're an ex-world champion or a current world champion to know what's going on than it is for you or I to go and knock on the door in Paris or London or wherever to see what's going on. They wouldn't give us too much, even if we arrive with a brown bag full of muffins and a few lattes. It probably still wouldn't let us in. But if a Max or a Lewis is there, someone's going to show them to the office, aren't they?
It's a good chat. I feel like some of them, to defend the drivers for a second, I think like the likes of George and Max had been on the sim and expressed his concerns that 26 was going to be, quote, the management championships. Both George and Max had expressed concerns,
they had,
for sure.
But then in order for them to be on the sim, that implies that the regulations are already drawn up. My point is that they should have been involved in the discussions right from the start.
Yeah.
Not once the regulations are there and how's it going to go? Oh, in the sim, it's looking a bit dodgy. It's too late then. We all know that it's too late, because things happen in a rush in Formula One. The drivers, the top drivers, the drivers with brains, should have made it their business to be in those initial discussions. And I'm not just focusing on the drivers. That would apply to engineers. It would apply to the whole way the sport is run, really. And I suppose you have to draw the line and say, well, we've got to have a certain number of people who'll make these decisions, and that's it. The rest of you can go away. But at least the driver does have a calling card. A very bright engineer at whatever team has who knocks on a door isn't necessarily going to get an audience, but a racing driver is. That's the point. He's got a calling card. So at least he can go out there and represent the other drivers and say, well, we don't actually want this. Do you guys realize that? We want a race. Or whatever it is they would say. Or this is what we want to do, Max. Can you take this over to the simulator now? Come back in 2 weeks. Tell us what you think. Wouldn't that be more logical? It's too late. Once the regulations are drawn up, forget it. The door's shut then.
Yeah. Good shouts. Peter, let me ask you about Aston Martin as you round third base. I, for one, thought that Adrian Newey, being the brilliant aero, the goatiest aerodynamicist to have ever goated in F1, that it was only that you'd be a fool to back against him building himself a rocket ship. But apparently I was a fool, Peter, that it seems like if Lance Stroll is to be believed, then Alonso too, both of whom said that Aston Martin are around 4.5 seconds behind the race lead, 1.5 of which is attributable to the power unit, the rest attributable to the gearbox and the aero and all this other stuff. Is this the worst car that Adrian Newey's ever built, Peter?
Much too early to say that. Much too early. And I let's just wait and see. If you think that you anticipated how good the car would be, I've done it even more, and I still stand exactly with what I said, that Adrian's car will be very, very good this year. This is we had a shakedown test. They did half a day or 1 day. We've had test one. It was just a test. Wait and see. Wait and see. I will be absolutely shocked if the Adrian Newey Aston Martin is off the pace at the end of this second test, and or maybe FP2 in Melbourne. Let's give him a little bit more time. But there's no doubt Adrian designs a much more complicated car than most engineers. And it's not in terms of suspension angles and weight distribution, all this stuff. It's just that everything is very, very precise details. and to get everything perfect is always difficult. And I know that from experience with the first FW14A, and it took, it was so difficult just getting the parts to fit. And I suspect that's what's going on right now. Yeah, we got CAD design, we got CAM manufacturing systems, but we did then too. And Adrian is just a perfectionist. And I think you'll find that the car will be quick. And anybody who's at the moment saying, oh, no, it's way off the pace, I think is wide of the mark. Now, the Honda situation, somewhat different. But again, I will be shocked if Adrian isn't able to steer that engine somewhere in the Ferrari region pretty quickly, even if they don't have the compression ratio advantage. I can't imagine they're going to be far away from the Ferrari power unit come Melbourne. And if they are, then give them a race or two.
Yeah.
And then they'll be there. They'll be there. Don't in any way underestimate them.
In time. Maybe they are verbally sandbagging, but it was quite stark, some of the comment. I mean, Fernando Alonso's team saying that they think he's going to be in a sort of F1 purgatory, that it's going to be hell for at the very least the first half, if not the first like 3/4 of the season. It's that, and then the 4.5 seconds from Lance was like.
But who's saying that?
So there's a couple of different people. I think Alonso's manager had said something like that, but I suppose more damning is that Lance was the one in the car, and he was that the 4.5 second quantum came from him.
Yeah, well, again, let's wait and see. And I can tell you now, if it turns out that there is a big advantage to be gained by having a very unstable rear and a very light rear axle, then Fernando Alonso will be another of the drivers who will benefit from that. Lance Stroll won't, that's for sure. And maybe Adrian's running the car like that from day one, just to make sure they're not shocked when it comes into play. Yeah, it could be something of that, that. These cars will not be pleasant to drive, in my opinion, apart from all the stuff of all the management stuff, none of which will be pleasant either for a racing driver who just wants to drive the car. The actual driving of the car, if you put aside all of the drama of the power unit, will not be a pleasant experience, I don't believe.
No.
It's frustrating and edgy. And it'll be the driver who has a very calm head and an unbelievable feel and suppleness, and not an acrobatic feel, because that implies reaction. It's going to be somebody who's able to anticipate beautifully what's going to happen next to the millisecond. And I'm talking about instability now, not management. And we know who those drivers are. And that's, Alonso will be there for that, for sure. Well, I say that. Adrian may be thinking, Fernando, we're going to have to get rid of this initial flick that you've habitually had all your life, because the car's going to do that on its own. It doesn't need you to give it an extra flick. Just be careful with that.
Yeah.
Could be a bit of that. But we all know how good, once the back's gone slightly, we all know how good Fernando is at just settling the car down and getting it into the corner. He's really, really good there. And it still amazes me how many people out there are saying, oh, Fernando's a has-been, he can't do this, he can't do that. Believe me, the guy's still got it, 100%.
He's not a bad peddler, Fernando. I will say, though, and again, testament to how difficult the Aston is, that people were trackside saying that it was almost like there was no way that Fernando could go into turn 10 without locking the brakes, and then they went in, changed something, and then it was almost like what they'd gained in him not locking up into turn 10, they almost redistributed. The car was much twitchier and the snap oversteer, and it was all just, I don't know, Peter. I want to see a quick Adrian Newey car as much as the next, but I think F1's better for having a fast Adrian Newey car, but I'm surprised at the extent to which they're 4.5 seconds. Is that 107% rule going to come into play potentially?
Yeah, but I mean, 4.5 seconds. Let's just put that into perspective. Oscar Piastri did a 34.5 on day 3, right?
Yeah.
Kimi Antonelli did a 33.6. So is anybody out there saying, oh, McLarens are a second off the pace with the same engine? Unbelievable. McLaren, how could they have dropped the ball? The world champions, they're a second off the pace now. What's going on? A second is a massive amount. 4 seconds is so large that it's not even a lap time.
No.
So don't even think about that. I mean, it's just nonsense. But people are not saying that about McLaren, are they? They're saying, oh, well, McLaren just finding their feet. They'll be right there. Quick car, Oscar, Lando, blah, blah, blah. So just everybody needs to, I think, with respect, just needs to calm down a little bit and put everything into perspective.
Yeah, it's early.
Yeah, 34.5 is a normal McLaren time, but it's actually very, very slow if you want to put it in the context of 2025.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Finally, Peter, as we round third, I want to ask you about Sir Lewis, because Sir Lewis Hamilton fans are getting quite excited. I mean, I watched some of Lewis's onboard, and I thought that I was seeing him doing the old Scandinavian flick turning thing, and without seeing the yellow helmet, I was convinced it was Charles. So comfortable did he look in the car after they'd brought all of the upgrades on day 2, the brand new floor, brand new wing, etc., etc. Is this now our Scuderia Ferrari back? Is this Ferrari now that we're looking at 2002, let's say? Do you feel, per your sources, do you feel like Ferrari might finally have got their ducks in a row?
Well, per my sources, no. Per my observations, like yours, not looking too bad, but the lap time's still relatively slow, and we shouldn't be making too much of that. I don't think that Scandinavian flicks are going to be the quick way of driving these cars at all. But you can, of course, set the car up like that, and you can have a bit of confidence in what you're doing. But what that will do for power generation, I doubt very much. So, yeah, Lewis, to me, it's not complicated. If the car is pretty good, I think he'll be right there. And I think he'll drive well, and he's motivated to do that. And he'll win Grand Prix if the car is a Grand Prix winner. I don't think he'll beat Charles, but I think he'll win Grand Prix. If the car is difficult to drive really quickly, and there is a lap time there, but it's one lap, and it's unbelievably difficult and high-speed entry on the rear, I think he'll struggle on a regular basis to beat Charles. And I think he would probably concede that. Why would he want to beat Charles in that situation? He wants to win races. He doesn't want to qualify 8th if Charles is 7th, or whatever, 6th if Charles is 7th. So, yeah, Lewis he's going to be very good still if the car is pretty good. And I don't know whether the Ferrari is good or not. I have to say, I have no idea. I think it feels to me it's about where it was last year relative to the opposition, maybe a bit easier to drive in some areas, but it doesn't look to be, demonstrably quicker than the rest in the way that the McLaren was last year, for example, which is if Lewis had an advantage like that, that's what I keep saying. I think he'll win Grand Prix in the car and potentially could, win a championship even, but he's got to have that sort of advantage. Anybody has, really. And it's going to be difficult otherwise. And difficult for Charles too.
True. Yeah. Lewis is dating Kim Kardashian now, so surely he's going to be at least a couple tenths quicker, surely, Peter.
You're winding me up now, trying to imply that I know who that is. I'm assuming she's the daughter of the famous lawyer, correct? In which case, has Lewis suddenly got some sort of legal interest?
And the lawyer herself, apparently.
Is she? Oh, well, there you go. A double whammy for him. The lawyer and the girlfriend.
It'll be...
No, Lewis has always kept his private life very separate from his racing life, and he's done a very good job with that. Yeah, as we can see, 7 world championships ain't bad, and he's still very motivated.
True.
So, I don't give him a hard time for that at all, because it's worked for him, and he's continuing to do what he's done before. He's just got a massive brick wall between his private life and his racing life. So fair enough. Go for it.
Peter, can I counter to that?
However, you want to encourage Lewis Hamilton to go and do a few days with Rob Wilson and to really get down to strip off all the layers and become the Lewis that he was in 2021. That's a different story. And I think he then would need to change the way he runs his life, as I've said before in a couple of live streams ago.
I just, a lot of people ask the question. I mean, he was asked the question during Bahrain testing. How did you enjoy it? Because he turned up to the Super Bowl with Kim Kardashian, which is always going to be a massive media storm, and TMZ and whoever else are going to get their arms around it. And he was asked the question about his company at the Super Bowl, to which he responded, as you just have, my private life is my private life. And I was like, hang on, you turned up to the biggest, there's no greater audience in American sports than the Super Bowl, and you turned up to it with the biggest woman celebrity like ever in the history of the world. Of course, people are going to ask you question.
Yeah, but I think, what we mean by private life in Lewis's case is anything that isn't racing, right? And whether his private life is very public or not is kind of irrelevant. It's what we're saying is that's not his racing life. And, whether he's singing in a rock group live on stage at, Shea Stadium, or whether he's at the Super Bowl, it's up to him. It's his life. All I'm saying is there's a brick wall between that private public life to Lewis, the racing driver. And I make that point because, as I said before, I think if you want to see Lewis being the driver he was in 21 and before that, then I think maybe he would need to change a bit. But if you want Lewis to be the Lewis that we all know and love, and who's going to win races in a quick car, whether it be a Mercedes, a McLaren, or a Ferrari, if it's quick, he'll win. Then let him carry on doing what he does. Dating whoever.
I'm conflicted.
Getting lots of legal instruction from whoever.
I'm conflicted on this one, Peter. On one side, I get Lewis can't. A fast Lewis Hamilton isn't a caged bird. I think sometimes he's got to go to the Met Gala. You're going to see him with Kim Kardashian to almost keep him happy, right? But then if past his prologue and you wanted to kill a sports athlete's career, you could do no better thing than having them date a Kardashian. They all, at some point, whether it's Lamar Odom or Reggie Bush or Odell Beckham Jr., they've all rubbed shoulders with a Kardashian, and then shortly thereafterwards, their sporting stock plummeted to like a rock, subprime, Peter, and that leaves me concerned.
I have no input on that at all because I don't know her. I never even really heard of her until we started talking about it with Lewis. So none of that means anything to me. The only thing I would say that there are plenty of women out there in the world who've ruined the careers of many racing drivers, actors, normal people, and plenty of men out there who've ruined the careers and lives of normal women. So, why one woman would be particularly bad for Lewis, I think is, none of us are in a position to say that, and we should show a bit of respect because probably, like all human beings, she's got a core that we don't know, as Lewis has. Somebody sent me a message the other day saying, I see Lewis publicly called her a bitch or something.
Wow.
And they said what class that is. And apparently it came out, but they're both laughing about it because it's some sort of, term of endearment, I think.
Wow.
But again, that's only hearsay. And who am I to make any judgment of that? I'm not. All I'm saying is that if Lewis wants to beat Charles every race, every qualifying session, I think he would need to reboot completely in order to get his driving back to where it was. If he wants to just continue as he is and knowing that he's good enough to win races in a good car, fine, let him get on with it and enjoy himself and do a great job for Formula One, keeping Formula One in the headlines at a time when, you can be talking about management and MG UK and this and that and fuel flow now being affected by energy, or you can talk about Lewis and what's he called? Kim whatever in America. And, I think that's probably a positive, is it not?
Just a little bit. I mean, to loop the circle, Peter, F1 is content now, right? And there's no bigger content creator, in inverted commas, than Lewis's old mate, Kim Kardashian. It will be interesting times. Here's hoping. Peter, you've been a legend as per usual, mate. I appreciate your time. I could talk your ears off for another 60 minutes, but I'm conscious that I don't want to keep you. You're a legend, Mr. Windsor.
You're conscious that Dexter behind me is desperate to take me for a walk.
Also, yeah. And I want to put some respect on Dexter's name. Mr. Windsor, you're a legend as always. If you're watching this on YouTube and you are not subscribed to Peter Windsor's YouTube channel, how very dare you call yourself an F1 fan? Go and do that now. If you're listening on a podcasting platform, the Short Corners podcast is a pick to click. Like, comment, subscribe, por favor. I appreciate each and every single one of you to the moon and back. The man on the right of your screen is Mr. Peter D. Windsor. I've been Cameron CC as per usual. Between now and next time, remember to look and never stare.